Brad, you have already made the distinction between XRP, the token, and Ripple, the company. You are the only, you're a regulated entity, or you're speaking on behalf of a regulated entity. When folks talk about, these different sorts of provisions, you are the person or your various teams doing the paperwork, providing evidence of baseline trustworthiness. What is it like to be a non-bank financial services provider operating at the intersection of these very traditionally regulated financial institutions and less traditionally regulated, less traditional financial institutions?
It's exciting. I feel a obligation to advocate for. There are these new technologies that we can use for the betterment of economic value to our citizens, to our businesses, even to central banks. And I think to the extent we can focus on, hey, these are new technologies that can be used in that way. Like the earliest days of the internet, can these technologies be used in illicit ways? Yes, and certainly we saw the early days of the internet and people called for bans of the internet.
And to be clear, the current days of the internet as well.
Oh, yeah, I guess, yeah. Well, although there was a much louder, higher decibel level call in maybe the 90s when people were, I think, more intimidated by how these technologies are being used. And I think we're seeing that play out in the world of blockchain as well. I thought it was interesting you described the UAE regulatory as light touch.
Said it was described as light touch.
Oh, described as light touch, all right. I actually give huge credit to the UAE.
Do you have a VARA license?
No, we do not. Although we might, I don't know the exact answer to that, but we do not currently. The point I would make, though, is...
You do not.
Thank you. The point I would make, though, is the UAE has done the work to codify what the regulations are. I think the challenge, and we discussed this before we got up here, I think the vast majority of players in the crypto space want to be good actors. But I think we have to be clear about what that means. And I think one of the challenges is, and I very much agreed with something the commissioner said, we talk about regulating crypto. I think we should, that's an abstract thing to say from my point of view. We need to regulate the activity. What is it that we're doing? So Ripple is in the business around cross-border payments. Our customers are banks. Our customers are regulated institutions. You can't have a non-KYC, know your customer transaction, et cetera. There are lots of regulations around payments, like know your customer, like AML, anti-money laundering, like OFAC compliance in the United States, et cetera, anti-terrorism finance. So I think when we say crypto's not regulated, I hear that and I think, I don't know what that means. Like Ripple's a very regulated company in lots of different jurisdictions, not yet in UAE perhaps. Although I don't know the exact status in UAE. The point as much as anything, I think it's a misnomer to describe crypto as an unregulated business. In the US, you have in the SEC, someone at the chair saying it's the Wild West. Look, there are clearly examples where that's true, but there are a lot of people solving real problems for real customers and taking the air and the froth out of the hype and speculative bubble that really was true in crypto, I think is really healthy.
I think one of the challenges here is there are actually very few people describing crypto as an unregulated business. What they're saying is that it is insufficiently regulated and that there are certain types of activities, separate out the obvious and egregious fraud, scams, and grift. But there are certain types of activities that are either being presented to customers as potentially safer than they are, or the promise of guaranteed returns when there are no such thing. Or in the US, for instance, many investors in certain of these crypto companies, several of which have now gone bankrupt, were under the impression that their deposits were insured by the FDIC, which is that up to $250,000 of whatever the deposits were would be protected. And that was an impression that was in a lot of ways encouraged by the marketing and the advertising of certain types of these entities.
But we have laws about that, right? And now, well, frankly, I think instead of going after Kim Kardashian for promoting a...
That case was dismissed.
But I didn't actually know that. I think the things you're describing, and even we talked again backstage, like if there's fraud, we have laws about that in major
But I
jurisdictions.
think what I would